Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there.
I feel like he's the Joel Embiid of the NFL right now. Thanks for tuning back into the Whistlethrower's podcast. This is Jack Mubarak, joined by
Aidan Tiksinski.
And no Jack Slaymaker tonight, but that's all right because we have a lot of topics to get into. We could start with the conference finals. Let's start in the Western Conference Finals because we know who's going to be representing the West in the finals this year, and it's the Denver Nuggets. I really thought this series was going to be a lot closer than it ended up being. Everyone, I feel like, had the Nuggets losing this series too, and it was just an out of left field for most people. And I think this is like finally Jokic's prove it moment. And like everyone now who used to hate him, myself included, can't say anything to him anymore because he's going to the finals and guys like Embiid aren't.
Well, it's good to finally hear you admit that, Jack, after all this defense I've had, because I felt pretty isolated on this podcast, I'm not going to lie.
No, you were for a while, but like Embiid looked a lot better in the regular season, but I still think Jokic should have won in hindsight, but like it took me realizing Embiid is not a winner in the postseason.
See, I disagree with that. Embiid should have won regular season MVP. He was a better regular season player. Like Jokic was great. Embiid was just a little bit better. And we talked about this. That the fact that one night when Embiid scored 53 on the Celtics and Jokic only scored 14 against the Rockets, that was a turning point. Mm-hmm. And again, you have that short-term memory. It makes sense why Embiid won. And look, Embiid would play great. I don't think you can take away his MVP of the regular season just because of how badly he played in the playoffs.
Fair.
But I do think that Jokic has proven who the more clutch center is and the clutch player overall. I mean, the fact, some of the shots that he made, that one over the head one where he's falling back.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, like no player, I've never seen a shot like that before. Mm-hmm. Pretty much ever by almost anyone in that situation. I do think that Jokic has shown who he is. But I think it's also interesting the fact that for 2 years he didn't have Jamal Murray, and that wasn't held against him when it came to MVP voting, but people held that against him when it came to playoffs. They said, oh, he's not clutch, he's not winning series. He was basically isolated, like alone. Now that he has Murray back, it feels a lot like they were in 2020.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I always used to say that he choked in the postseason, and I never took that into account, so that's my apology to him right there. I'm not saying that he needs Murray to win, but like he can't. When your second best player is Michael Porter Jr., you're not going to go far at all. What I will say is that the Lakers have a lot to work on this offseason. They don't have like a finalized roster. And if you remember, like when LeBron was in the post-game interview, that's what he said. Like he has no idea what he's walking into next season. The fact that he's even flirting with retirement seems like, oh, if the team can't figure it out, then like maybe I should just hang it up. There are a lot of guys that didn't show up in this series for them. D'Angelo Russell was a total non-factor. He couldn't get anything going. And in Game 4, he even got benched in place of Rui Hachimura. Mm-hmm. You can't do that from the guy that's on a max deal and supposed to be your third option. Anthony Davis, he was very hit or miss. He was kind of like the James Harden for that team, but you couldn't really get much out of him. Game 4, in the little minutes that Tristan Thompson played, he looked like he was playing a lot better than Anthony Davis. And you can't have that from your second option and your best defender and your best like big man. Like that just can't happen. Can't get outplayed by a guy that's been out of the league for a year and a half.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Thompson was on the Lakers roster until he scored those 4 points last night. Like, I had no idea. But he didn't really play at all until those minutes.
No,
so it's understandable why people might not have known that. The guy that really stepped up for me is Austin Reeves.
Oh, yeah.
He is going to be the guy that I think is the focal point. You have your three-point shooter. And in today's NBA, you really need that. Well, I mean, look at the Miami Heat. They have like three guys that they can rely on to score threes. Mm-hmm. So at least the Lakers have that. Davis, again, very hit or miss when it comes to injuries. As of now, I'm still comfortable with him, considering that he made it through a full season, was able to play in the playoffs, contribute in the playoffs. That was huge for them. Hachimura, to me, I really liked him. I think that he could be a starter on this Lakers team. I understand why they didn't start him with having D'Angelo, but yeah, D'Angelo just flat out played awful in these series. And I was not really expecting that from him, considering that there's been a lot of times where he's been the star player on playoff teams. Thinking back to that Nets team in 2018 where he's almost single-handedly dragged them into succeed at the playoffs.
Mhm.
I just didn't see that guy
Yeah, no.
in this series.
I think he's cooked personally. Just like watching him throughout his career, he just doesn't look like that same player at all.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. I mean, he's only 27.
Yeah.
But it's sort of understandable. He's played with some really bad teams, and he's been the best player on those bad teams.
Mhm.
And that can mentally drain you. And then when you finally get into this sort of era, I mean, so it could be two things. One, it could be the fact that he's on so many bad teams that he's just mentally cooked. Two, is the fact this is the farthest he's ever made it in an NBA season.
Yeah.
And that could just be physically tiring. He's not used to it. Where a guy like LeBron, he's used to this by this point. So LeBron knows what it takes to play deep into the postseason, where a guy like Russ just has no idea.
I actually could be like really overreacting because they played like less than 40 games together and like probably wasn't tapped in with their system because he got there at such like a weird part of the season. So maybe I should take a step back, but they have a lot to figure out because if they lose like 2 out of the guys that like are available to leave, like they're back down to like where LeBron's Lakers have been the last couple of years. So I think it would be cool to get after Kyrie somehow and keep D'Angelo off the bench. I think that would be the dream scenario.
It would be until you have to actually deal with the non-basketball side of Kyrie in LA. And
do you really think it would be a problem though? Because like there's no pandemic.
It's not even like the pandemic stuff. I'm past that. It's the fact that there was that like weird 20 days that he just left the Nets without saying anything.
It's the Nets though. Like no one had a good time there.
No, and
they got to do whatever they want with no consequence.
But do you think the Lakers are set up? I mean, yeah, they're set up better because they don't have Steve Nash as their coach, but it's still a younger coach. It's still a team that outside of LeBron and AD, it's not a very veteran-heavy team.
But he has LeBron is the thing, and he's the only player that like he seemingly bought into.
Yeah, for the 2 years that he was okay with it, and then wanted to be the superstar.
Yeah, but I feel like in hindsight he regrets it. I feel like he said he has regret it. So I think if he were to find himself in the Lakers, like it would be as perfect as a scenario for him. And like I don't really like the narrative that he's not like a good player for an organization. I mean, he is a counterculturalist. Like he doesn't like corporations, so like of course he's not loyal to teams, and fans feel like he's not loyal to fans. But I don't think that's the case at all. Like I just think he does whatever's best for him because he feels like he's been in the league long enough to know that the organizations always don't care about him.
Yeah.
So
no, and I do get that to a certain point, but also when you play a sport, you have to be bought into the team culture, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And Kyrie was bought in at the beginning of his career with the Cavs, and then he wanted more than that. And I think at that point, that's become an issue. Look, when you have an issue with Boston's culture, the way it was set up with Brad Stevens, to me, that is sort of a turnoff. If I'm looking at the front office, because that Celtics team was set.
yeah.
Like, there wasn't a whole lot of friction between any of the players and Stevens and upper management. It seemed to only be Kyrie. Now, it's different for the Celtics this year. Obviously, there's been a whole lot of other stuff that's happened.
Uh-huh.
But to me, when it came to that culture with the Celtics, I feel like he should have been bought in a little bit more than he was. And obviously the Nets, like, we've now figured out that they were terribly run organization, which was kind of the whole question mark of Kyrie and KD going there in the first place, was that it seemed to be set up for the superstars. And as we've learned, you can't just let superstars run the team.
Yeah. I feel like if Kyrie were to go to the Celtics in this point of his career, it wouldn't have ended up that way. Because, like, he was a little young when he went there, and, like, that was his first team he went to, and he wanted to become the superstar. And, like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were so young at that point. And Al Horford, was he even there at the time? Like, that would have been the only veteran guy.
Yeah, he might have been there. Like, it might have been his first year when it was Kyrie's last, but I don't know 100%.
Yeah, but I don't know. I know he is a problem, but, like, I think it is a risk worth taking if you're the Lakers, because I don't know. You saw he went live today, and he was saying, like, don't believe anything that anyone says about me on TV unless it comes from me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be dispelling Lakers rumors because that's what everyone is talking about too when they mention Kyrie. So maybe he intends to stay with the Mavericks depending on how their draft goes. But I don't know. It's something worth note.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see where he goes. Because I think, to me, I mean, one team I don't know he's definitely not going back to is the Nets. That's like pretty much ruled out. If you're going back 3 teams in his career, I don't think that he's that interested in the Cavs either. So I don't think there's sort of any return that could happen between any of those 3 teams. Because I also don't see him going back to the Celtics. I don't even think the Celtics have the cap space to get someone like him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the Mavs, when it comes to the money sense, it would be perfect. Obviously, him and Luka did not play very well together this year. And they went from being a borderline playoff team to flat out missing the playoffs and playing awful in the last month and a half. So the Lakers, like, it would be a great pairing on paper. But it seems like that's always been the stigma around Kyrie, is that every team that he's on looks great on paper, and then it sort of has played out that that's not really the case.
I just feel like they didn't have enough time together, especially on the Mavs. Like,
I agree.
It's like the D'Angelo Russell thing we just talked about. Like, but the thing is, I don't know if we're ever gonna get a chance to see like what would happen if they get a training camp and like everything together, because I don't know personally if he's gonna be back or not. We could talk about the Miami Heat Celtics series. So it did get extended last night, and it's going to go to a 5th game, and the 5th game will be in Boston. Do you see any momentum forming for the Celtics?
No. Not at all. No, they were lucky to win this game. I mean, they flat out gave up on Joe Mazzulla in Game 4. The fact that Al Horford was the one sitting in the coach's chair that entire time, and Mazzulla looked basically lost the entire game. To me, that was just a really bad sign. And then, not even 24 hours later, all these stories are coming out that the players were unhappy with the way that Udoka was fired. They were unhappy with a lot of the coaching that Mazzulla was doing. Apparently, they didn't even want Robert Williams in at all until they basically had to, because they were just not stopping the interior offense.
With the players, or?
From my understanding, yeah. That the players didn't like that rotation until it was becoming evident that they had to throw in another center.
That's really weird, because as soon as they thrown him in, like they played so much better.
Well, and that could be, but that's sort of the issue, right? Is that if it's the players making these decisions and Mazzulla's just going along with it, that's holding the team back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's been the biggest issue throughout this entire postseason.
It just looks like such a bad move getting rid of Udoka at this point, because like, I mean, you get the sense that like the Celtics did not want to do what they had to do, but from outside pressure, like they had to, which is really kind of bullshit to me, because like he was the undoubtedly best coach last year, and you really shook up a lot of things, because they were like one of the craziest stories like in the runs for a postseason in recent memory, because they were like middle of the pack, like 500 record, and then somehow they just turn it all around, go on a crazy run, and go all the way to the finals with a first-year coach. So, like, I don't know. I disagree, like, personally with, like, the parameters of the firing. I don't want to get too into it, but, like, I don't, like, know what the Celtics were thinking were going to happen. Like, you can't expect to, like, run back to the finals when you got rid of, like, the reason why you got to the finals to begin with. And you didn't even try getting, like, a veteran guy who's, like, been an assistant coach for a couple of years and like do up for a head coach spot. Like, no, you got like this intern head coach, and he has no experience, and it's just too much of a high pressure situation to throw a guy that has no coaching experience in.
Well, and the worst part too is they took off the interim label in the middle of the season when the Celtics are playing well.
Yeah.
So now it's going to look even worse when they inevitably move on from him, because that's what they're going to have to do. I'm interested to see if Brad Stevens throws his hat in the ring again. I don't think he wants to, but I think it's just so messed up at this point that the only way to fix it is for him to go back. Sort of the same reason why he was hired as a 36-year-old coach in the first place, is because the Celtics needed a culture change. They saw what he did at, I believe it was it BYU or Creighton that he was at? I don't remember. It was one of those small little schools, but he led them to a really high-profile, nationally ranked team, and then went to the Celtics as a guy that really wasn't supposed to do this, and totally changed the franchise from just being sort of like stumbling around the East to now a perennial NBA Finals pick until this year, because it's just not happening this year.
I feel like Brad Stevens, like, I don't think he's going to throw his hat in the ring again. I feel like he's comfortable, and I feel like he did a good job at his promotion in the front office. But I feel like he's going to have more influence with like the whole coaching scheme, if that makes any sense. Like, you should look to him at this point, because especially if you don't get like Monty Williams or something, which is a guy who I think they should get. And almost come back to earth with. Yeah, it's just such a messed up situation. And like, if you said like after they made the finals that this was going to happen and he was going to get fired for this reason, like everyone would have laughed because like it's just so idiotic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, it's also idiotic to do, like, he knew that this could be a consequence to having an affair in the office. Like,
yeah,
it's not saying that it should have been handled the way it was, because there definitely could have been changes made by the Celtics, but you have to sort of, when you work for any type of corporation, the NBA is corporate, you have to consider these sort of things. Mm-hmm. This is why there's an HR department, so you can go to them and be like, hey, this is happening. What can I do to make sure that I don't lose my job? And I feel like those steps were intentionally not handled, and rightly or wrongly, this is the consequence to that.
Yeah.
But the people that are screwed over the most are the players, because they had nothing to do with this at all. They obviously liked having Udoka as their head coach, and now they're without him in this situation. It seems like they could have really relied on him, because Jared Musavilla is just not that guy.
No, he isn't. There's nothing he could do to like get a job next year with the Celtics. Like, he's done.
Yeah,
and that's saying something because he took them all the way to the conference finals. But like, yeah, I can't really like break down anything that the players are doing wrong.
No.
It's just like all coaching scheme. And do you wonder that if Jaylen Brown gets frustrated and wants out?
See, it's going to be sort of weird to see them split up because him and Tatum have played for so long, but it could just be that this is the end of the line for the Celtics. It's unfortunate for them that it would happen without getting a finals, because they've been so good for the last 7 years. I do think that it is a problem that Jaylen Brown and a lot of other players for the Celtics just flat out gave up in Game 3. Like, they just had no effort at all. And I understand that you're frustrated with the coach and you're frustrated that you're down in the series and all this, but you can't just go into Miami after losing the first two in Boston and show no heart after the first quarter. And I think that lack of effort in Game 3, regardless if they won Game 4, sort of shows that there's players that aren't mentally checked in, and that could be on their minds when they go into the offseason. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't totally shock me to see Brown leave. I'd be shocked if Tatum left.
Yeah.
He's now become, like when you think of great Celtics players in the playoffs, Tatum's going to be on your mind.
Yeah.
Because of what some of the games that he's had in this postseason and past postseasons as well. But I do think that Brown could be frustrated the fact that he doesn't have the role that he thinks he should have, because he's always going to be number 2 to Tatum when they're playing together. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to another team to try to be that number 1. Sort of the same thing that Kyrie did when he was on the Cavs.
So we could transition into John Morant. Obviously, this is recorded on May 24th, and earlier today he posted some cryptic things to his IG story. He posted goodbyes to his mom, his dad, and his daughter, which is really odd way of saying that you're taking a break from social media. It extended to the point where police checked on him later in the day and found out that he was fine, and that was his way of telling us he needed a break from the internet. That's just like, I don't want to kick a man when he's down, but like, he has an obsession with emptying his laundry out on social media for whatever reason. He has like that main character syndrome, and like, could you have really, like, if you thought about that for 5 minutes, you could have thought of a million better ways to say, I'm taking a break from social media, instead of scaring everyone that you're going to do the unthinkable.
Yeah, well, I still think that even though that's where everyone's mind went to, and luckily that wasn't the case, it still feels like a cry for help. Mm-hmm. And someone needs to step in and actually make sure that he's getting the treatment that he needs.
Yeah, there aren't good people in his circle, obviously, because he keeps doing the same things over and over again.
Right, and unfortunately, if he doesn't get that help or fix some of the things that's happening, he's not only going to be suspended for a long, lengthy amount of time, he'll lose his sneaker deal, he'll lose other contracts when it comes to commercials, and he'll financially hurt himself and his family. And I think at that point, that's when you need to start taking more consideration, that when it's not just about you, it's about the people around you. That was always a big criticism of me about AI at the end of his career, is that when he was gambling all that money away, it wasn't that I'm upset that you're blowing all that money, because you can make those choices, that's fine. But when you have a family that you need to take care of after too, and you're just giving up any consideration for what they need, that's where you need to draw a line a little bit and see it be like, okay, this isn't helping anyone, and it's certainly not helping the people around you that you say you care about. And again, it comes down to just getting professional help. And obviously what he did going to Miami, it didn't work when he went to rehab there. But
it was very conveniently around spring
Right, yeah, you did
time.
mention that. Yeah, I don't think that rehab was necessarily the best pick, but I think you need to just have a therapist. And obviously he hasn't said whether or not he's going to therapy on a regular basis, but I think that it should be something that if he's not doing it, should consider going for. Because this could help a lot of these problems that he's having.
Obviously, he's going to get suspended like 20 games or something, right? At least. I think it's going to be closer to 30 to 40, but what should he do with his time? Like, if it's not counseling in a different state and it's not hanging around the same people that you're getting in trouble with, like, what is it? Because he's going to have a lot of free time on his hand, because not only is he going to be not playing or traveling with it, he can't go to practice or anything like that either. So, like, he's literally basically on house arrest unless he wants to go out and cause more trouble.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we can't get into John Morant's head. Only John Morant knows what he wants to do with that free time. But if it were personally me in this situation, I would just want to spend as much time as I could with my family. My daughter, I don't think, is it a girlfriend that he had the kid with? Because I don't think he's married.
You know, it was a girlfriend.
Yeah, so spend time with her. Spend time.
I don't think they're together.
Maybe not together, but maybe like try to. Well, that's the whole thing though, is that like even if they're not together, maybe reach out and be like, hey, I want to make this be more codependent instead of just me being away and showing up when I'm not having practice games, that sort of thing. Because obviously that can be a huge problem with NBA players, is that you're traveling so much that you don't have time to really build on those family connections, especially if it was with someone that you're no longer really talking to. So I would spend time trying to like sort of figure that out, but especially spend more time with the daughter, spend more time with his parents, sort of talk to these people that you are close with, try to cut ties with the people that you realize are negatively impacting you.
Yeah.
I would also, because he's not obviously going to be with team activities, but I would also still reach out to someone on the team that you trust. I'm sure that there's someone that he can trust with the Memphis Grizzlies, because obviously he's a franchise player. They want
Steven Adams comes to mind.
Right. Yeah. It might be a player, might be a coach, might be someone in the front office. Whoever it is, just be talking to them on a regular basis as well. Checking in, making sure that you're okay, making sure that you're still, even though you're away from the team, keeping the team's best interests in mind while it's not overly impacting you either. Yeah. So I feel like there is a lot that he can do. Whether or not he does it, it's really just up to him.
I hope he comes out strong.
Me too.
And like doesn't keep doing this, because his life's gonna go like downhill so fast if he doesn't switch.
And the part that I think frustrates a lot of people, especially people that followed him in college, is that he was not like if you were to think of a player that would do this out of that draft class, John Morant would probably be the last person that would come.
Yeah, it's like Deshaun Watson. Like, he was like a character, like on like a good character on the Clemson campus, and like all that shit happens. So like, it's always the people you least expect it to be.
And money and fame does weird things to people. Some people are totally okay getting those millions of dollars coming from nothing. Other people, even though John Morant didn't come from nothing, this is still more money than he probably ever imagined in his life, and more fame than he ever imagined. And again, that just messes with people's heads sometimes and makes them do crazy things that you wouldn't expect of them.
Oh, I think you said it beautifully. We'll wrap up NBA. You can move into the NFL, so I was watching First Take this morning, and I saw Dan Orlovsky made a top 5 most pressured quarterbacks heading into the season, and I wholeheartedly disagree with it. The first one was Aaron Rodgers. The second one was Jordan Love. Third was Justin Fields. I forget who fourth was, but I remember disagreeing with the pick. And 5 was Lamar Jackson. Obviously, a lot of weird picks in there, and some picks that I think are in the wrong place. So I'm just going to do you want to do yours?
Yeah, I didn't really make one yet, but I will say that I saw Lasky make a couple of lists. I also saw do one on Get Up where it was just NFC quarterbacks. So to me, Rodgers at number 1, totally agree with. You're going from...
Well, he's in the AFC.
Well, I'm just saying overall. But I saw that list, so I'm just going to combine a couple. So I do agree with this Get Up number 1. That Rodgers going to the Jets, a lot of pressure on him just because the Jets have been so bad for so long, and now they're finally getting a great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. I like Love on that list for having the most pressure. The Packers clearly have a lot of trust in him, even though he's barely played any games.
Oh, 4 was Trey Lance.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. I do think that there's a lot of pressure on Jordan Love to do well, especially because the last 2 quarterbacks did really well with the Packers and were Hall of Famers. Obviously, it's hard to say that Love will live up to that expectation, but he's got to be close to an above-average quarterback.
Yeah, I do agree with that synopsis. Like, the last 2 quarterbacks have been phenomenal, but I don't think the pressure is on this season. It's going to be essentially his first year ever, being a starter quarterback, and we've seen a lot of guys, and especially a lot of the high draft picks, not do well their first year.
Yeah.
And then come into their own. But if we're having this conversation, even next year, the season after that, I could see him being one of the first on this list. Yeah. This year, I want to give him a little bit of slack.
Yeah. I would probably put him at 5, honestly, because there's a couple of other quarterbacks that have more pressure on them. Rodgers, to me, definitely one. I think there's a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones.
Oh, yeah.
That contract was gigantic for a guy that only threw 15 touchdown passes. I don't think he was necessarily worth it, but he's got to prove to the Giants that he was absolutely worth it. Mm-hmm. And he's got to do it this year. This has got to be his first big season with the Giants, not just getting them into the playoffs as the third wild card out of the AFC or NFC. They got to be way ahead of where they were.
I do agree with that too. They went balls out with the contracts this year, and I personally thought it was very questionable bringing both of them back on massive deals. If I were them, I would have maybe looked to get rid of Saquon, but that's personally just me, because I don't like paying a running back that much money, especially when you're paying a running quarterback even more money.
Right.
It just seems counterintuitive to me, but yeah, he needs to step up big time for the Giants.
Yeah, so I would also... I'm going to take Lamar off. I don't think Lamar deserves that. I don't think he deserves it.
Really?
No, because this is an MVP caliber player. Yes, he got the big contract that he's been asking for. But every time he's healthy, to me, he's still that guy. Now, the issue is his health, for sure. But he can't control that. And every time he's on the field, Baltimore's a much better team. Mm-hmm. Had Baltimore not signed that contract, they would have been so much worse.
Yeah.
It would have been atrociously bad. And to me, there's not the same pressure on Lamar to keep winning. Obviously, I think he needs to get farther when it comes to winning than he has. But it's not the same way that there's pressure on Aaron Rodgers to get the Jets as close to the Super Bowl as humanly possible. It's just not there because we know the Ravens aren't that talented. The same way that the Jets have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and it's seemingly only a quarterback away. Yeah, so I have 3 right now. So I've got Rodgers at 1, Daniel Jones 2, Love at 5. Gotta think about this for a sec. This is gonna be a little bit of an out there one, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. I think Kyler Murray's got a lot of pressure on him too. I know that the Cardinals aren't going to be a good team.
Is he gonna be back right away even?
I don't think so now that you mention it, but I do think that if he comes back this year at all, he needs to show that he can still be an NFL starter. And again, it depends whether or not he shows up early enough to do that. But to me, there is pressure on a guy like that where your team is not going to be good, but you were drafted super high and have showed a lot of promise, and the promise has gone down. And maybe this injury will be a wake-up call for him and say, hey, I need to really put in the effort to be that guy, to be the number 1 starter on the Cardinals.
And maybe ask the owner to get new grass in the stadium.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Well, the Giants and Jets have got to do that as well.
Yeah. So you just need 4.
I need 4. I hate doing this because it's another guy that's really only started a couple of seasons, but Justin Fields has got a lot of pressure on him too.
Really?
Yeah, 100%, because the Bears are going to be expected to be a lot better, and I feel like Fields is, again, one of those guys that's shown a lot of promise, but he's going to have to step up big time because there is a lot of expectations for him. Rightly or wrongly, there's some people that are picking him to be a underdog MVP pick. And I feel like that sort of pressure, it's hard to play under when you know that your team might not be up to that level. But the NFC is going to be pretty wide open with the fact that we've said on this podcast, the Vikings are going to fall off a lot.
Yeah. The
Lions will be better, but we're still not sure exactly if they can put it together for an entire season because they just haven't done that yet. And the Packers are expected to have a decline with having Jordan Love in. Mm-hmm. So seemingly this is a division where if you win 8-9 games, you could win it.
Yeah.
And the Bears, to me, have done almost enough to get within that level, but it really depends on how Justin Field plays.
I didn't think about it that way, but I do see the argument there now that you laid it out. But like Jordan Love, I don't feel like the team is there yet, and I don't think them going to the playoffs this year is going to be like that big of a deal because like they're not going to get far anyway.
Yeah.
So, but they are poised like after this next draft class to like really make runs in the future. So it's one of those things where I'm going to wait another year or two before I say like, okay, you got to like lay it on the line now.
I think it's more the fact because he's still under that rookie contract to see if he's worth an extension.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he's got to prove that this year, and that's why there's so much pressure on him. Not necessarily in team success, but his individual success has got to be enough for the Bears to say, hey, we feel comfortable going forward with you as our quarterback to make that Super Bowl run.
And it's really interesting now that you finished your list because the first guy on my list you didn't even mention.
Really?
Josh Allen.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to use the comparison. I feel like he's the Joel Embiid of the NFL right now. Like, you know he's great. He shuts off after the second playoff game. And it's been the same way, just like Joel in the second round. Like, you got a very angry Stephon Diggs. Like, I don't know if you saw like a celebrity basketball game. He was wearing Cowboy stars and colors.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And he took down all the posts of him wearing Bills uniforms. There's one photo of him in a football uniform, and it's when he's on the Vikings. Unfollowed the team, very unhappy with the team, obviously. I feel like if he comes back next year, like this is the last chance they have before like they actually blow it all up. Because if they lose this year, they're at their peak. Like they can't keep trying anymore. But yeah, for that, I'm saying Josh Allen, number one. I think this is his make or break year. If not, he'll probably end up somewhere else.
See, I disagree with that part, but I do see the Bills blowing it up. The thing is, you can build around a franchise quarterback still, especially with the way that quarterbacks stay healthy now. You could still have him for another 5 years, wait and build up. Obviously, he wouldn't be happy with that, would probably ask for a trade. But if he is seemingly as sold on the Bills as he seems to be, that could be an option. I do think there's a lot of pressure on him, especially because Aaron Rodgers just joined that division.
Oh, yeah.
And this could be so much better than it already was. And I do think it's interesting that you mentioned the second round game because the Bills played horribly in the first round game against the Dolphins when Skylar Thompson was in at quarterback.
Yeah.
Like they could have easily lost that game if the ball had bounced the Dolphins' way a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to be a huge concern for Buffalo, and especially because they're also building that new stadium. They're either proposing one. It's sort of weird because their stadium's really old, so it's been proposed that it's a dome stadium. I don't know if that's actually been set in stone yet, but it's seeming like, hey, we're at our peak now, so let's propose it so the city approves it.
Mm-hmm.
If they blow it up after this point, it seems like that probably won't happen, or it'd be a lot harder to get that through.
Yeah.
So I think that that's even more pressure on him. So I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Second, I'm going to go Lamar Jackson. Now, he really dug himself into a hole when he didn't negotiate the contract in the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And he had many opportunities to get it done in the middle of the season and very early in the offseason. But what did he decide to do? He decided to do it midway through and right after Jalen Hurts got his deal. So in my mind, he has to play better than Jalen Hurts this year because he got that much more than him. I don't think he's able to do that. And you said it, like he doesn't get far in the postseason because he gets injured all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if he could do that because his play style is hard on his body. I think he needs to do two things: actually stay healthy in the postseason and play better than Jalen Hurts. And personally, I don't think he could do that.
You know who he needs to talk to? He needs to talk to Randall Cunningham. Because Cunningham was the same way where he was super athletic and really used that athletic ability throughout the early parts of his career. And then when he got hurt, he learned how to be a pocket quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think Lamar could easily, he's shown me that he has the arm strength to do that.
He does, yeah.
I think he just needs to learn from someone to actually stay in the pocket. And I feel like the Ravens aren't set up to do that because of their style, because their unwillingness to go after free agents. And I feel like you could sell wide receivers, star wide receivers on Baltimore if you say, hey, we're going to change our offense and make this a pass-heavy team.
Yeah, I did see they got a new offensive coordinator. I'm blanking on his name. But Lamar is ecstatic with the changes he's been making so far. If you remember last year, your Vikings, Justin Jefferson said that when they got the guy from
Yep.
Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And they had a great year. So we'll see. the reason I will cut him some slack is that team is very untalented.
Yeah.
But I just feel like he dug himself into a hole because how poorly he handled his contract situation. 3, I don't want to do this, but Aaron Rodgers, I kind of have to because I get the sense this is going to be one of his last 3 seasons. Yeah. So if he doesn't go far this year, he's going to have 1 or 2 chances to take that very young and promising team to a Super Bowl. And I don't think he has the ability not to do it, but I think time is very much against his side.
Yeah.
So I'll put Rodgers at 3. Let's see. I'll go Herbert at 4.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Now, obviously, he's like one of the best quarterbacks right now. But they had a disappointing exit to the playoffs this year. Their coaching is terrible. They got a lot of guys that could potentially walk in the next couple of years. Yeah. Like, they don't have much building blocks there. They're like the second team in Los Angeles, so they're not that much of a popular destination. Yeah. I'm only saying this because I don't see that much room for improvement outside of him. And if he can't make it work, then the team is just going to collapse on itself.
Yeah, I could see that happening. And it is unfortunate because the Chargers should have won that playoff game.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason they should have lost. So if they win that, I feel like we're having a much different conversation about Herbert. But I do agree from that sense.
Let's see, that was 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 5, I'm going to go Daniel Jones again for the same reasons you said. I kind of thought it was ridiculous paying him that much money, especially that he's like the third best quarterback in that division, in my opinion. And
I don't even think that's, to me, that's almost a fact.
Yeah.
He's definitely nowhere close to Jalen Hurts, and Dak has still shown much more than he has.
Yeah, but at times Daniel Jones does look a lot better than Dak. So it is a discussion sometimes, but yeah, like it was really out of left field for me. And I think that the Giants are in like a really bad spot with like how stacked the Eagles are, and like the Cowboys could easily turn it around because guys want to go there first off. Dak can play really amazing sometimes. For example, like when he played Tom Brady in his last game, he looked like Mahomes, but like that's a different story. He's very inconsistent. And yeah, I'll just throw in an honorable mention, Dak.
Yeah. That was on Orlowski's list actually for NFC quarterbacks with the most pressure, so I think that makes sense.
The thing is, I didn't give him a top 5 spot is because like everyone kind of knows what he is at this point, and he can't like play like the way he did in the first playoff game at a consistent level. They can't really get rid of him either because he's signed for a long time. Yeah. And like the quarterback market is really slim right now because so many guys got signed for so much money. Yeah. They're kind of in a stalemate there, but he still will always have pressure because he's a Cowboy and they keep losing in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in an honorable mention again. This is a name that's going to be a little bit surprising, but for the reason of the fact that he was a first overall draft pick and is now on this team, I'm going to go Baker Mayfield. He's being given his starting role with Tampa Bay. This is going to be his last chance to prove that he can be a starter in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I feel like that he hasn't shown enough to be put on the list with like Aaron Rodgers.
No.
But he did show a lot of promise in the one game that he had with LA, and then just that horrible game on Christmas against Denver. Mm-hmm. So he's been inconsistent in the 2 starts he had. This is his first real opportunity to be a full-time starter. And to me, he needs to put in the work this offseason to prove that he can be the number 1 option on Tampa Bay because that division is so weak and so wide open. If you have consistent quarterback play from him, there's a chance Tampa Bay could limp in the playoffs somehow.
They could, yeah, especially because of how bad the division is.
Right, and I'm not saying that Baker's now going to become like what we were expecting him to when he was drafted. I just don't think that's going to happen.
He has the ability to, like, he's going to have 2 good receivers.
Yeah,
can you imagine if he messes up Mike Davis's 1,000-yard streak?
Mike Evans, yeah.
Oh, Mike Evans, yeah.
No, that would like, because of how badly he could play, he could be fired and have to be cut solely because it pissed off Mike Evans so much.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a little bit of pressure, maybe not from the national media, maybe not even from people inside Tampa Bay, but I think Baker's got to put that pressure on himself.
Yeah, he does, because no one expects a thing from him. That team like is in the middle of nowhere in that division.
They are, but that's the whole thing, is that middle of nowhere is still better than where some of these other teams are at.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be competitive, not in the same way that the NFC East is competitive. It's going to be competitive where it's a bunch of bad teams that are just beating the crap out of each other to get the one playoff spot that's going to be available for them.
Mm-hmm.
Where with the NFC East, I still expect the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys to compete for 3 spots in the playoffs like they did last year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason why they don't, especially because there's going to be a drop-off in the NFC West this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, no one's getting a wild card spot in Baker's division.
No, exactly. No, I would bet money that this wouldn't happen, and I'd be absolutely shocked if it did.
Yeah.
So I do think, and look, the other thing too is that Tampa Bay won this division with Brady. Yes, there was a fall off, and they finished at 7. Was it 7 and?
It was 8 and 9.
It was 8 and 9. So again, not great, but that was also with Tom Brady as quarterback. Baker needs to show that he can keep that team somewhere at that level.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
If they get less than 6 wins, then he's in trouble. But
right.
6 wins would be like a good season for Baker Mayfield.
And in my opinion, he's one of the few quarterbacks that will be starting week 1 whose job could be on the line for next season.
Yeah.
There's not like, it feels like to me a lot of guys have signed these huge contracts, or in the sense of Washington, whatever quarterback they have right now is a bridge quarterback. Like, I'm not expecting whoever starts for Washington to be the starter in the
Sam
future.
Howell?
Yeah, I don't expect...
He could be.
Maybe, but I don't, like... Sam Howell was what? A 4th-round pick, 5th-round pick?
Something like that.
Like, to me, if Washington does really, really badly, like, way worse than they did last year, there's no reason why they would say, okay, we're keeping Howell. Like, to me, this is sort of... They'll see what he has, but they're not locked in with him. It's sort of the same way with Baker, but Baker actually was drafted number 1 overall and was a starter in the NFL for a decent amount of time with Cleveland.
Yeah. And he did turn around the culture in Cleveland.
He did. So I think that that's who Tampa Bay is sort of expecting to have, not the guy that totally fizzled out and did okay with the Rams, but not great. And I feel like that he's the one guy that was, like I said, that could be a starter week 1 who might not be around to be a starter week 2. That actually, like, has been a starter before this year.
So you think he could lose his job as early as week 1?
No, I'm just saying that, like, out of all the quarterbacks that come to mind, he's the one quarterback that will be starting week 1 whose job is in jeopardy almost immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Sam Howell, Washington is going to ride out with him. The other quarterbacks, I think, are pretty much set. Like, obviously, Arizona will go to Kyler whenever Kyler's available. To me, out of the guys that will already have a profile, Baker's going to be the one that everyone's looking at to see, can you keep this job? Sort of the same way that everyone was looking at Geno Smith last year, and Geno Smith became MVP. Like, I feel like that's got to now be, I'm not saying Baker will be MVP, but you've got to look at someone that has that ability to play up to a level the way that Geno did.
Do you have anything else?
Only other thing I got is we got the Hurricanes-Panthers series, and we haven't really talked much NHL.
We never talked NHL on this show.
But the Panthers have been really amazing.
Is Giroux on this team?
Yeah, no, he's not. He's now in Ottawa. Okay. He was on the Panthers. But what's so amazing about the Panthers in this series overall is that there was the one game that went into quadruple overtime.
Yeah.
And the Panthers got away with that, and they're still up 3-0 in this series. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the score is yet, but they're going to put it on in 1 sec, or they should. So it's 2-1 Panthers and going in the second period. And it seems like that they're going to be playing Vegas, who's up 3-0 in their series. So what's really amazing is that out of the 4 series, there could potentially be 3 sweeps when you look in between the NBA and NHL.
Yeah.
Which I never would have suspected that at all. And especially because Florida's crazy because they beat the Bruins, who are the 1 seed and have the most wins in NHL history.
History?
Yeah.
Damn.
They have the most wins and points in NHL history. Panthers beat them in 7. And they've been the underdog in every series, including this one against Carolina, and have flat out outplayed them as well. I don't know if they'll outplay Vegas, because Vegas is just amazing. But I guess we'll see. It will be entertaining. And I love the NHL playoffs because you always get like an 8 seed that can sneak through. It doesn't really happen too much in the NBA. Mm-hmm. The fact that the Heat are doing it is an anomaly. But I remember when Nashville did it a few years ago because they beat the Blackhawks, who I'm a pretty big Blackhawks fan. So they beat them when the Blackhawks were the 1 seed and then made it to the finals. So it does happen more in the NHL. That's why people consider it one of the most fun series to watch. So definitely we'll keep an eye out for this next game, and maybe next week we'll talk some more NHL.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. Like Stephen A. said, I only know the puck is black in this sport, so, like, yeah. I think we'll leave it there. Next week, we might do a Q&A episode because, like, there's going to be nothing to talk about next week because it's going to be, there's
we'll be
8 days until the final starts.
Maybe we'll bring Caleb on next week.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, sounds good.
All right, we'll see you next Saturday.